Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for this week's Lunch and Learn for Leaders and those who want to be. I'm your host, Jill Valdez of Link Consulting, and I'm excited to be here with you today to talk about a topic that can be quite challenging, but essential for our growth as leaders. We're going to talk about conflict. Now, a few years ago, I faced a conflict with a colleague about how to approach a project. And I wanted to try new methods because that's me. I'm all about trying the new things, but they preferred sticking with the tried and true ways. This disagreement caused great tension between us, but instead of letting it fester, we decided to talk it out. And by the end of our conversation, we not only had found common ground, but we also improved our working relationship. Can anyone else relate to that? Have you ever had a situation like that? Yes, no, maybe?
I had a manager that I was not getting along with, and it got so bad that she was like working on writing me up, and we fortunately, and like getting rid of me, unfortunately, we had some really tough conversations. She was willing to be a party to that. I think it takes two. And we worked it out so well that I don't work there anymore, but we're friends, and she's looking for a job, and she reached out to me to see if she could come work with me. So I think that's the greatest success story in my life, of working together with people and making things better. So
that is awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Uncommon.
It is uncommon.
Even in my own life, yeah.
Well, today we're going to learn how to navigate conflict with confidence and turn those tensions into opportunities for teamwork and success. So first, let's talk about what conflict is. Conflict occurs when two or more people have different opinions or goals or needs. It's important to understand that conflict in itself is not inherently bad. It's just actually a natural part of teamwork and collaboration.
I'll have to get you. Okay.
So let's think of it this way. Imagine a team of chefs in a kitchen. Each chef has their own recipe for the specialty of the day. Now, if they all try to make the dish the way that they think is best without discussing it, there will likely be chaos. But if they communicate and work together, they can create an even more delicious dish than they could have alone. Now, can anyone tell me what you think conflict might look like in your workplace? So for those of you who are new to Lunch and Learn, know that this is very interactive. I ask lots of questions, so I love audience participation. But if you don't have anything, that's good too, and I'm not afraid of silence, and I'll just move on.
I have one that we're dealing with right now, which is our teams go work on the same project at different times. So they're going from, different team on one shift, 2 days later, there's another shift. And there can often be communication and expectation gaps between those shifts, and frustration and conflict there, because the new team thinks that the other team should have done X, Y, and Z, and the old team was like, you weren't there, you don't know what we were dealing with. And so I've definitely seen that potential.
Yeah, for sure. Miscommunication about responsibilities or different expectations regarding who's doing what or what the deadlines are. And so, yeah, most people, to be honest, most people are very focused on harmony. They place high value on stability, harmony, and relationships, and they find themselves actually feeling anxious or uncomfortable during conflicts. They might think, and I don't know if you ever heard this before, I just want everyone to get along. Some of us in the room are old enough to remember Rodney King. Can't we just all get along? Now, these people prioritize the relationships, and they fear that addressing a disagreement could actually harm their connections with others. So here's 3 most common reactions to conflict. First of all, avoidance. This is when we ignore the conflict, hoping it will all just go away. Next is confrontation. This is when someone reacts either defensively or aggressively. Now, they may express their feelings, but they do so in a way that can actually escalate the situation instead of resolving the situation. And then the third way that people react to conflict is quick fixes. Some people, they just try to resolve the issue super quickly without fully understanding it. And that actually ends up leading to recurring conflicts. It's essential to recognize that conflict doesn't have to be destructive. In fact, it can be a powerful catalyst for growth if approached with the right mindset. While it's admirable to want to maintain peace, avoiding conflict can sometimes lead to more significant issues. And the reality is that disagreements are inevitable, and they can actually lead to positive outcomes if handled properly. So let's talk about why conflict can be good. Now that we've discussed what conflict actually is and how people typically respond to it, conflict, like I've said, can actually be this positive force within our teams. Now, let me just lay the caveat. For those of you who know, I'm very big on personalities. I am a D on the disc. I'm an 8 on the Enneagram. I'm the challenger in predictive index. I'm the maverick. Like I'm the type A person that conflict for me is like, bring it on. I am not afraid of conflict. If you want to start a conflict, just inject me into any conversation and I can make that happen for you. But there's actually a lot of positive forces. And so for those who are not such big fans of conflict and who try to avoid it and who would rather feel more secure with what I call artificial harmony, we're going to talk about some of these hidden benefits so that you can see conflict in a better light, so that you can be less afraid of it and actually see how it's going to make you and your coworkers and that relationship and the situation better. All right. So number one, sparking creativity and innovation. You see, conflict often brings out diverse perspective. Remember when we were kids, that toy, the kaleidoscope, and you look through the tiny hole and just by turning things and moving things, it was this different perspective. When team members disagree, they challenge each other's ideas, and this can actually lead to innovative solutions that no one individual might have actually considered. So, for example, think about a time when you were brainstorming for ideas for a project. Did differing opinions lead to a more creative outcome? Yeah. The next thing is that it fosters better understanding. You're thinking conflict. How does conflict foster better understanding? Well, engaging in conflict allows team members to learn about each other. You learn about each other's values, you learn about their motivations, and you learn about their perspectives. This understanding can strengthen relationships and build trust. And when team members see each other as allies rather than adversaries, they can work more effectively together. So, can anyone share an example of a time when a disagreement helped you understand the other person better?
I think I had one where I had a disagreement and a couple of them, but with your help, Jill, when we came in, it helped me understand my perception was different than reality. My
Yeah.
perception of where that person was coming from was different than where it was truly coming from. I thought this, and so it helped me understand versus just assume.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah. And that's one of the benefits of conflict is it strengthens relationships. That's number 3, strengthening relationships. When conflicts are resolved successfully, they can actually enhance relationships. It's kind of the idea of when you break a bone and it heals back stronger. It's the same thing with conflict. working through difficulties together, it fosters this sense of camaraderie. It shows that team members can rely on each other even during challenging times. So imagine the two colleagues who disagree over a project's direction, but work through their differences. By finding common ground, they not only resolve the conflict, but they've now built this stronger partnership moving forward. I know that embracing conflict can be daunting, but when we reframe our perspectives, it can become a powerful tool for success. So let's talk about how to reframe conflict. To effectively navigate it, you have to reframe how you view it. When people hear the word conflict, it tends to make them pucker up a little bit and think bad. But we're going to talk today about how conflict actually is good. Instead of seeing conflict as a threat, we can view it as an opportunity for improvement and collaboration. I'm going to say that again. Instead of seeing conflict as a threat, view it as an opportunity for improvement and collaboration. So here's a few ways to reframe conflict. First of all, as an opportunity for growth. When conflict arises, ask yourself, what can I learn from this situation? Because I don't care how old you are. I don't care how knowledgeable you are not always going to be the smartest person in the room. And even if you are, there's going to be somebody else smarter than you somewhere in the world. And so when we hear things that are different, we can take this as an opportunity. What can I learn in this situation? This mindset shift, it allows you to approach the conflict as a chance to grow rather than a barrier to overcome. So for people who struggle with conflict, if they reframe it and reframe their perspective and say, okay, this is not a problem with our relationship. This is an opportunity for me to get closer to this person, to learn better about this person so that I can be a better person, so that I can have more knowledge, so that I can have a better personality, all of my different perspectives. Okay. So don't see conflict as a barrier. See it as an opportunity to grow. Number two is building resilience. Every time that you navigate conflict successfully, you build resilience. This not only helps you in your current situation, but it also equips you for future challenges. If I can get through this, I can get through. Have you ever said that? If I can get through this, I can get through anything. And then the universe goes, oh yeah, bet me, watch this. But it's true. If that resilience comes from overcoming challenges. So when you're overcoming conflict, the challenge of a conflict, you're going to build more resilience. You're going to become less combative. You're going to become less afraid of conflict. You're going to become less of having this negative reaction to it. And it's going to become more of a positive experience for you. And then number three, by engaging in constructive conflict, teams enhance their dynamics. I don't remember it, probably back in like 2016, 2017, escape rooms became a really big thing. And that was the team building thing. Like, let's go do an escape room. You talk about a conflict on steroids. You're going to have all these different personalities. You're going to have the pressure of a time clock and the pressure of not losing and not being considered a loser and incapable of being able to escape this room. When you can solve conflict like that together, it brings your team actually closer. What escape rooms and what conflict causes in teams is it causes you to talk to each other. It causes you to say, what's going on? It causes you to get to know somebody better. And teams that embrace open dialogue, they tend to be more engaged and they're more motivated and they're actually more productive. So think about this. Consider a sports team. My Padres, I'm so sad. They lost to the Dodgers. My oldest daughter is ecstatic. She's like, oh, the Padres, they're snobs. The Dodgers, they deserve to win. I'm like, no, not my Padres. But anyway, consider a sports team like the Padres that lost a game. And if the coach and the players reflect on what went wrong and discuss their feelings openly, they can come back stronger for the next game. They learn from their mistakes and they develop better strategies together. Now, while conflict may initially seem super uncomfortable, it can lead to increased creativity, understanding, and those stronger relationships when managed well. So let's get to the nuts and bolts. Let's work on some strategies for navigating conflict. So now that we've established the importance and the benefits of conflict, let's talk about some practical strategies for navigating it confidently. These strategies, they're going to help you approach conflict with a constructive mindset, turning potential tensions into an opportunity for collaboration and growth. And can I tell you, 90% of your success in a conflict is going to come from the fact that you look at it and you see, this is not a bad thing. This is an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity for our team to become better. And it's an opportunity for good. When you have that mindset, that right there removes so many of the barriers that keep you trapped, that keep your mind trapped in not being able to see or do anything differently than what you know. Because, we have that fight or flight instinct that kicks in, especially during conflict. And if you don't know how to get out of that, that's going to be your response. But if you look at conflict as something different to not activate that behavior, that's when you're going to grow. Excuse me. So first of all, active listening. One of the most crucial skills in navigating conflict is active listening. Active listening. Not just listening for the sake of responding, not just listening for the sake of pretending like you actually care, but actually actively listening. It means fully concentrating, understanding, and responding thoughtfully to what the other person is saying, rather than just simply waiting for your turn to speak. It requires patience. It requires discipline. Because if there's a conflict, most of the time people simply want to have their point heard and agreed upon. But if we're going to engage in healthy conflict, we have to set that aside, listen to what the other person is saying, and then wait our turn. Active listening, it helps to ensure that everyone feels heard and valued. And let me tell you, that right there significantly reduces tension. That's what most people want to know. Have you heard me? And did you value what I actually had to say? One of the key phrases that I teach people is, I can understand how you would feel that way. Or I can understand how you might think that. Or even saying, wow, I hear you. That is very different from what I would have thought. Those are phrases that let people know you've actually heard them and that you valued the words that have come out of the mouth. So to practice active listening, just in case you need some warm-up tips, give your full attention. Don't be looking at your phone. Don't be, actively listening while you're responding to an email. Full attention. Reflect back. Summarize what the other person has said to confirm your understanding, because typically when that happens, you're not parroting the words back to them. You're summarizing how you heard it. And that right there can begin the process of conflict resolution, because you're using your words to say back to them what they've said. And all of a sudden, there could just be this magic light bulb moment for both of you. Like, oh, I never thought of it from that perspective. So reflect back. What I hear you saying is blah, blah. And then ask open-ended questions. It encourages deeper discussion and shows your willingness to actually understand the other person's perspectives. Questions like, can you tell me more about your thoughts on this, can facilitate an open dialogue. By practicing active listening, you create a safe space for open communication, making it easier to address underlying issues and collaborate on solutions. All right, number 2, emphasizing empathy. We all know about empathy. Everybody's talking about empathy. We don't always practice it very well, but it is a critical component in navigating conflict. It involves understanding and sharing the feelings of others, putting yourself in their shoes, stepping outside of your perspective and actually turning to take a look at what the world looks like from their perspective. And when you demonstrate empathy, you create this bond of trust, which actually diffuses tensions. So to practice empathy, acknowledge the feelings, even if you disagree. Again, I can see why you feel that way. That goes a long way in building rapport. Put yourself in their shoes. Consider their experiences, consider their motivations, try to understand from their perspective, and then respond with compassion. This doesn't mean that you have to agree with them, but it shows that you value their perspective. Empathy creates an environment where team members feel safe to express themselves, leading to more productive conversations. And number 3, finding common ground. Now, finding common ground is essential for resolving conflict effectively. It shifts the focus from individual positions to a shared goal. And here's some strategies to find common ground. First of all, identify what is the shared goal. What do you both want to achieve? And so it may very well be that you're saying, okay, I want to achieve this. And the other person says, I want to achieve this. And then saying, okay, what do these two things have in common? That's the shared goal. When you align your objectives, you diffuse that adversarial atmosphere and you create a collaborative atmosphere. Focus on interests rather than positions. And here's what I mean. Positions are specific demands that people make, while interests are the underlying reasons behind the demands. So for example, if one team member wants to use a specific software because they find it easier, while another prefers a different tool because they like its advanced features, understanding the interests of the persons helps find a solution that incorporates elements of both preferences. And then compromise. Sometimes meeting halfway is necessary. Be open to finding solutions that address both parties' concerns. It's not that you both have to walk away feeling like, oh, I lost. Like that's not compromise, and that's not really a winning situation. That's going to result in some underlying resentments that's going to carry forward in the relationship. But compromise is saying, let's focus on what we both got out of this and how it came together in our best interest, in our company's best interest, in our organization or our family, wherever the conflict might be happening. That's compromise. When you do that, it really minimizes that feeling of us versus them, allowing people to move forward. Have you ever heard of a conflict resolution plan? Have you ever created a conflict resolution plan? Well, let's do that together. Creating a structured conflict resolution plan can help your team navigate conflicts more smoothly. So here's some framework for you to implement. Number 1, set ground rules. Those are incredibly important, and they're going to be different for most organizations, but some general ones are ground rules. I've talked about this before in some other conversations and some other workshops. This comes from the fact that my husband and I, who have been married for 31 years, when we first got engaged back then, you went to premarital counseling. We did that, and our counselor was like, you guys are in trouble because you guys don't know how to fight. We had 2 very different approaches. He's like, so you guys need to set some stinking rules. So that's what we did. So set ground rules. Agree on how to communicate respectfully, especially during disagreements. And it's important to understand what communicating respectfully means for each person. because it differs. For me, I could be yelling, but I'm still feeling like I'm communicating respectfully because that was what I grew up with. My parents, man, when they fought, if we had or if me and my brother fought, we were yelling at each other. They were knocked down, dragging out. I mean, there was no abuse. It wasn't bad, but we were very demonstrative in our arguments. And then, we sorted through our feelings. We threw them all up all over each other. And then we went, oh, I love you. I forgive you. I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And then we moved on. My husband's family was just the opposite. His parents would go into their bedroom, close the door so the kids never saw them fight. And then they would fight in Spanish. So my husband's like, I had no idea what they were fighting about. I don't know what they were talking about. So figure out what communicating respectfully actually means. For a lot of people, and I do say that this should be a ground rule, is not interrupting each other and being open to feedback. Okay, so don't interrupt, stay on topic. That can be another rule. Don't use the word always and never, because then those are very confining words. So in your group, set ground rules. Next thing, when you're in a conflict, or as you're creating your conflict resolution plan as a team, is define the problem. Clearly articulate what the conflict is about. There's nothing worse than having somebody mad at you and you're not really sure why, and they're not really willing to talk about it. How can I solve a problem if I don't know what it is? So clearly articulate what the conflict is about and make sure that everyone involved has the same understanding of the issue. The next piece of this framework is brainstorm solutions. And this might take a little bit to get to because sometimes emotions are really hot and people are feeling a lot of things. But again, if you have followed some of the previous things that we talked about, validating other people's feelings, making it a safe place, making sure that everybody knows these are our boundaries of how we communicate with each other, then it makes it easier. Again, as you're seeing conflict as an opportunity for growth and an opportunity to come to a better solution, that allows you some brainstorming. Encourage everybody to contribute ideas for resolving the conflict. Even as simple as saying, so if you were able to solve this problem, what would that look like for you? And you write it down. And you ask, if it's a group of you or if it's just two of you, if you were able to resolve this problem, what would that look like for you? No idea is too small or insignificant. Brainstorming allows for creativity. And then the next thing is you want to evaluate those options. Discuss the pros and cons of each potential solution, keeping your shared goals in mind. And then implement a solution. Agree on the best course of action and then commit to it. Make sure that everyone knows their roles in carrying that out. And finally, follow up. Check in with each other after some time has passed to make sure that the solution is working and to make any necessary adjustments. Because if it's not working, that can create a whole new set of conflict. So make sure and be, and at that point, you guys have been trying some things and maybe some of it's worked and maybe some of it hasn't worked. But now you get to come to each other when emotions aren't so high and when things aren't so heated and people aren't so with the feelings and say, hey, how's this working? Amazingly, it might come where there's a time where you both are like, man, this is not working for either of us. Let's come up with some other idea. But by having a clear conflict resolution plan, you empower your team to address conflicts proactively and constructively. Anybody have anything to add to that? What have you used? Have you ever tried a plan like this and how's that worked for you?
I have a question on something you started all the way back before the plan, which is the avoidance. So I could have this plan, but how would I work with someone who at the beginning of a conflict says, peace out, I don't want to be part of this, and runs away? How do I
Oh,
invite them to this plan if they are avoidant?
yeah. Well, communicating that you do have a plan and that it is a plan that's based on coming with the best outcome as opposed to a bitch session or a fight, that, helping them reframe conflict and letting them know that their voice and their perspective is incredibly important. For those people, when they understand why, they tend to have an easier time buying in and participating. It's a great question.
I have a
Anybody
question
else?
also.
Yeah.
Jill, back in the conflict resolution plan, when you were talking about understanding, all parties understanding what the conflict is,
Mhm.
what if each person has a different idea of what the conflict is?
So then there's obviously some issues in team dynamics. And at that point, then it is, let's write down these issues and let's address them one by one.
Oh, so it could be more issues or challenges than one. It could be multiple.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. So let's put it all together. Now that you've explored the importance of navigating conflict and the strategies that you can use, let's consider how to approach these and integrate this into your everyday leadership practice. Number one, shift your mindset. We've talked about that. Conflict is an opportunity for growth rather than a hurdle to overcome. And practice makes perfect. Like any skill, effective conflict resolution, it takes practice. Don't be discouraged if it feels uncomfortable at first. The more you engage in it, and the more you do these strategies, the more natural they will become. Number three, model the behavior. As leaders, it's crucial to model the behavior you want to see in your team. If you're telling them that you want them all to participate, but you're sitting back and you're not doing anything, that's what they're going to do. They do what you see, they do what they see, not what you say. Encourage open communication. That is a key to resolving conflict and continuing to have healthy conflict in your workplace. And then evaluate and reflect. After navigating a conflict, take time to evaluate. I mean, sit down and say, how did that work? What went right? Reflect on what valuable insights that you gathered. Ask yourself, what could I have done differently? What strategies worked? What was confusing? Remember, it's not about avoiding conflict, but it's learning how to manage conflict confidently. Every time you practice these steps, you're building your leadership skills and creating stronger, more resilient teams. So in our closing minutes, and I know that we've gone a little bit over, but I know that this has been a very important topic. Let's think about how to apply those strategies. How might you, think about a conflict that you had, how might you apply active listening in that situation?
So I like, talking about empathy and how important it is, that it solves so much. And for me, when I'm in a conflict, I try to take a step back and go, okay, try to feel that person, like, what's their biggest fear? What are they afraid of? Like, and that helps you define between interest and position, because they may tell you that something is upsetting to them, but what is the reason? What is it that they're afraid of? What's their worst case scenario going on in their head, I guess? And that's something that I use a lot.
That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? I want you to remember every conflict is unique. So while the strategies that we discussed here provide a framework, the specific application, that may vary based on the dynamics of your team and the nature of the conflict. But every time that you do this, every single time you're going to get better. You're building your skills, you're building your team, you're building trust, and you're just going to keep getting better. So once again, I'm Jill Valdez of Link Consulting, where we're working with people to become confident leaders of committed teams, providing stellar service. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also find out more about the services I provide by visiting linkconsulting.info. When you go there, you'll have the opportunity to download my free ebook. And I challenge each of you to reflect on a recent conflict you encountered. Try to apply one of the steps that we discussed today in your next interaction and notice how it changes the dynamic. And I hope to see you at next week's Lunch and Learn, where we will be discussing leading through change, overcoming resistance, and building buy-in. Thanks again so much for being here. I hope that you all have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Jill. Bye, everyone.